Hey everyone, it's Blobby back again. I hope you're all doing well. Today we're going to be diving into the Urban Legends Iceberg once again. It's been a while since I've made my last Iceberg video, so maybe in that time, if you're unaware or you're new to my channel and you don't know what an iceberg is a chart where the very top layer, aka the tip of the iceberg, has the most well-known information, while the lower you dive, the more obscure the information on the chart is. But let's just get right into it. The Water Bomber and the Scuba Diver is a story that surrounds a water bomber's hose refilling in a body of water when it accidentally picks up a scuba diver and unknowingly drops them in the inferno that it was battling. The Babysitter the Man Upstairs is a legend that dates back to around 1960. It follows a teenage girl who's just babysitting children when she receives phone calls from a stalker who continuously asks her to check on the children. The story originated, sadly, from the real-life murder of Janet Chrisman, who was a 13-year-old girl who was babysitting one night when an intruder broke in and viciously attacked her. Unfortunately, there was never any justice made in this case, and it remained cold. Even with all the evidence that was found in the house, they still couldn't link it to any perpetrators. Bloody Mary is a legend where if you chant her name repeatedly in the mirror, she's supposed to appear and either kill all of those who have summoned her or reveal the future. The origin of Bloody Mary is from a far more historical perspective. Bloody Mary was thought to have been one of the following women: Mary Tudor, which was Mary I of England, who had put many Protestants to death for heresy, which gave her the nickname Bloody Mary; Elizabeth Bathory, also known as the Queen of Blood, who was supposedly convicted for murdering hundreds of young girls so she could bathe in their blood; or Mary Worth, who was a witch executed in the Salem witch trials. The Expressionless. The Expressionless is the main antagonist/protagonist of the creepypasta with the same name. It's a strange demonic woman with paranormal abilities who craves blood. Hippo eats Dwarf. The Hippo eats Dwarf legend rose up surrounding a news article that had claimed that a dwarf was accidentally eaten by a hippopotamus. The full story says that there was a freak accident during a circus act involving a dwarf bouncing on a trampoline, when the dwarf accidentally jumped sideways off the trampoline just at the moment when a hippopotamus began to yawn, which led the dwarf to land directly in the mouth, abruptly being swallowed whole. The legend itself had been circulating the internet since the mid-1990s, with many newspapers even being fooled into publishing the story as fact. Curse of Bambino. The Curse of Bambino was a bad omen that was supposedly placed on the Boston Red Sox after the team had sold Babe Ruth to the Yankees after the 1919 season. The curse was used to explain the lack of a World Series win from the Red Sox for the next 86 years. Kelly-Hopkinsville Encounter was a claimed close encounter with extraterrestrial beings in 1955 near Kelly and Hopkinsville in Christian County, Kentucky, in the U.S. It's one of their most significant and well-documented UFO incidents ever. A group of 5 adults and 7 children arrived at the Hopkinsville police station claiming that small alien creatures from a spaceship had been attacking their farmhouse, and they had been holding them off with gunfire for nearly 4 hours. They described 12 to 15 short, dark creatures that would pop up at the doorways or peer into windows of their home. When police investigated, they were only able to find the evidence of gunfire and holes in windows and door screens made by firearms. The next day, neighbors had told the 2 officers that the group had just packed up and left after claiming the creatures had returned around 3:30 in the morning. Later, the United States Air Force classified the incident as a hoax. In the Air Tonight. The song In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins has an urban legend surrounding it that says that the lyrics are based on a drowning incident where someone was close enough to save the person drowning, but chose not to, while Collins was too far to help and he had to watch on. But Collins continuously denies the legend, saying that he was only going through a divorce at the time, and the song's lyrics were just things that were out of anger/bitterness. The Lighthouse and Naval vessel legend describes an encounter between a naval ship and what appears to be another vessel at first, where both ships are on a collision course. The naval vessel requests that the other ship changes course, and the other party responds that the naval vessel should change course. Whereupon that response, the captain of the naval vessel tells them again to change courses, identifying themselves and threatening the other ship, which elicits a response worded as, "I'm a lighthouse, your call." This interaction and legend was later debunked by multiple other sources, such as a former Coast Guardsman who stated that the lighthouse obviously looks nothing like a ship, and unless the weather was extremely foggy, which in most variations of the story they don't mention any fog, you can see a lighthouse from as far away as a fixed white light flashes at a set number of seconds, while on the other hand, ships are usually moving and have much smaller, colored lights. Melania Trump replacement. In 2017, a conspiracy theory began that said the First Lady of the United States, Melania Trump, was replaced, or was sometimes replaced by a body double, and that the real Melania was either dead, refusing to attend occasional events, or had exited from public life entirely. Supporters of the theory state some physical differences in facial features, bodily dimensions, or just behavior between the original and the quote-unquote replacement. But Trump himself addressed the theory through tweets and comments to reporters, stating that it was fake news. Ghost P-40. The Ghost P-40 has been depicted as a ship and a plane, both with separated stories, one of which dating back to 1942, which was a year after the Pearl Harbor attack. A radar in the United States picked up an unusual reading. An airplane appeared to be heading directly for American soil from Japan. The operators knew that this had none of the markings of an aerial attack, as the sky was overcast and it was late evening, so 2 pilots were sent up to intercept the plane. But as soon as they approached the plane, they radioed back that the plane was an old P-40 that bore markings that hadn't been used since the attack on Pearl Harbor. The plane was riddled with bullets, and the pilot was slumped in the cockpit, stained with fresh blood. As they peered into the window, the pilot raised slightly, turned to them, offering a meek wave before plummeting out of the sky and into the ground. The skeleton in a tree was an urban legend that said that years after the defeat of St. Clair in 1791 at Fort Recovery, Mercer County, Ohio, the skeleton of a Captain Roger Vanderburg was found in a tree. The only issue was that along with his diary, there was nothing really known about him, and he was never listed as a casualty in the 1791 battle. The story had originated in 1864 from a Scottish novel, but nothing about Vanderburg is really known other than his body was found in a tree. The Little Green Men is a stereotypical depiction of aliens, with little green humanoid creatures with antennas on their head. Rods. Rods are elongated visual artifacts that appear in photos and videos, and some who believe in paranormal activity claim that they're either extraterrestrial life forms or maybe small UFOs. Sydney Bridge hidden bodies. I don't know anything about this, and I couldn't really find anything from just looking up, Sydney Bridge hidden bodies, bridges in Sydney. So if any of you guys happen to know what this entry may be talking about, comment that down below, please. Swallowing gum. If you swallow gum, it stays in your body for 7 years. It's a myth that's been disproven over and over again by real doctors. Organ theft. Waking up in a bathtub full of ice with a missing kidney was a legend that had been spread around for a while. The whole story is about a businessman on vacation in Vegas, where he spends the night drinking and wakes up in a bathtub in his hotel room that's full of ice with a note taped to the wall saying, "Call 911 if you want to live." The operator asks him to touch his back while he's on the phone, and as he does so, he realizes that there's a large scar on his lower back, that someone had done a surgery on him and removed his liver. Unfortunately, this didn't stick to just being a scary story to tell people. In New Orleans in the late 90s, rumors arose about a crime ring that would drug tourists and harvest their organs to sell on the black market. But after an investigation with the police, the allegations were found to be false. But soon these stories would spread around and led to the assault of an American tourist in Guatemala who was accused of kidnapping an 8-year-old boy and harvesting their organs. The tourist was stabbed and beaten so badly that she ended up in a coma with broken arms and a fractured skull, along with U.S. Marines guarding her room. The child was eventually found later and had no correlation to the tourist whatsoever. Dog Boy. Dog Boy is an urban legend from some people in Claiborne County that believe ghosts, including a World War I soldier and a family, haunt a Victorian-era home in downtown Quitman. The family of ghosts were thought to have been people that were good when alive, other than their son Gerald, who was a vicious and cruel brat who had some very unusual habits early on, which would be collecting cats and dogs, which led to his nickname Dog Boy. When he would catch these strays, he would torture them, and residents said that they could hear the animals howl at night. When Gerald grew up, he became even worse, and he would regularly keep his parents imprisoned in the upstairs of their home. He'd feed them, but he would only do it when he felt like they really needed it, or whenever he wanted to. He was also much stronger and larger than his elderly parents. At 6'4" and 300 pounds, he would regularly beat up his father, and even threw him out of an upstairs window. And even though the dad was in his late 70s at the time, he held on to the ledge until police arrived. It's said that even after Gerald died, he continued to haunt the home, and some people moving in would feel chills and animals would refuse to enter the house. Mothman. Mothman is a humanoid creature that was reportedly spotted in Point Pleasant area from November 15, 1966 to December 15, 1967. The first newspaper report was published by Point Pleasant Register and was titled "Couple See Man-Sized Bird Creature Something," and it was soon picked up by the national press and spread around the United States. Mothman himself is described as a large winged humanoid with bright red eyes. There's also an annual festival in Point Pleasant that's devoted to the Mothman legend. Alice killings. The Alice killings are one of the strangest unsolved serial killings in Japan. From 1999 to 2005, a series of 5 killings took place. The killings were different from each other, but the calling card left by the killer at each scene linked them together. At each scene, the perpetrator would leave a playing card in an obvious location that had the word Alice written on it using the victim's blood. If you want me to maybe go in depth about this case, let me know in the comments, but I'm going to leave it at that for now just because it's quite the lengthy subject, I'll say. Lei Loyan. The Lei Loyan, also known as the Ghost of Males, was a humanoid figure that was said to haunt the woodlands near the Swiss town of Males. It's described as a tall creature that would dress up in a gimp suit and gas mask that would completely cover its head and face. The nature of the appearance brings the question of what it actually is, or who it is, whether it's like a cryptid, an urban legend, or just a guy who likes to dress up. The creature has been spotted on and off for 10 years walking through the woods, and apparently the creature ended up taking his own life as its clothes and a note were found. The letter also says that Le Matin murdered a harmless being by revealing its existence, and expressed the recent exposure may have led to further attention, leading the person to abandon taking their walks. Urine Indicator Dye. And if you pee in a pool, the urine dye would turn the water around you a different color, just to show everyone that you peed in the pool. The death of Gloria Ramirez. The death of Gloria Ramirez, also referred to as the Toxic Lady or the Toxic Woman. They referred to her as this because when hospital workers were exposed to her body and blood, they became ill. She had been admitted to the emergency room after suffering from late-stage cervical cancer. She was extremely confused and suffering from tachycardia and Cheney strokes respiration. When they tried sedating her, she responded poorly, and they needed to defibrillate her heart. At that point, people had noticed an oily sheen was covering her body and a strange odor had been coming out of her mouth. When they attempted to draw blood from her body, they noticed an ammonia-like smell that was coming from the tube. And during treatment, several workers fainted and others experienced shortness of breath and muscle spasms. 5 workers ended up hospitalized, with one ending up in intensive care for 2 weeks after interacting with her body. 8 feet tall. 8 feet tall refers to the ghost of a woman who appears with black hair. She often wears a white hat and a white dress with no shoes. It's said that she catches her victims after stalking them for a while, and then finally takes them from their family and kills them. Cursed Japanese Kleenex ad. This is a very weird ad about a woman and an ogre sitting in hay using Kleenex products while the song "It's a Fine Day" plays in the background.
What did you do with it? I don't know.
Ratman of Southend Gozu. The Ratman of Southend is an urban legend that originated in Southend-on-Sea in Essex. The Ratman tells of an old homeless man who is seeking shelter from the cold in an underpass when he is beaten nearly to death by some teens. Eventually, he dies from the freezing and blood loss, though as he died, many vermin who inhabited the area gathered and devoured his face. Soon after, sightings of a ghostly figure in the underpass, as well as a rat-like squealing and scraping is heard, as if large claws were moving across the walls. Gateway of the Mind. Gateway of the Mind. In 1983, a group of scientists conducted an experiment in a facility that involved a person losing all access to their senses in order for them to perceive the presence of God. The scientists believed that the five senses clouded our awareness of eternity, and without them a human could actually establish contact with God. An old man with nothing left to live for was the only subject to volunteer, and in order to purge him of his senses, they surgically severed his sensory nerve connections to his brain. Throughout the test days, he went from saying jumbled words to saying that he could hear his dead wife speaking to him and that he could speak back, to becoming extremely distressed and saying hundreds of voices refused to leave him alone. Then he began to claw at his non-functional eyes, saying that he wanted something to stop. At some point, he yelled, "No heaven, no forgiveness." Towards the end of the test period, he began to go mad, biting flesh off of his body, and he was finally restrained to a table after a while of screaming and struggling. When he finally stops, he turns his head, making eye contact with the scientist, even though he has no ability to see, and he says, "I have spoken with God. He has abandoned us." That's when his vital sign stops, and they were unable to find a cause of death. Evil Farming Game. A post made in 2016 on r/tip of my joystick about an evil farming game similar to Harvest Moon, but you kill your wife and have to hide the body. After you kill her, you farm to stay alive while also trying to make sure that nobody finds out you killed your wife, and every now and then cops come to your house and you have to hide her corpse. Eventually though, some DMs with the original Redditor and a video made by Wang, they were able to figure out that the game never actually existed, and the original Redditor had just mixed up a YouTube video made by Vsauce as a real game instead of just a video. Denver International Airport. The Denver International Airport has a plethora of legends around it, one of the most prominent ones being that the airport was built by a secret society. Some say it was the Freemasons, some say it was the Illuminati, and some say the New World Order, or even just all three of them. The strongest evidence around is the capstone located at the south entrance, dated March 19, 1994, and a time capsule containing messages and memorabilia to the people of Colorado in 2094, with a marker depicting the square and compass symbol of the Freemasons and the names of two grand lodges and their masters. But the Air Force officials say that the only evidence here is the generosity of the local Masonic lodges that crafted and laid the stone. Huggin Molly. Huggin Molly is an Alabama restaurant that has a witch legend behind it. The legend itself is mostly used by parents to get their kids to come home before dark. The tale itself says that a phantom woman would appear to children at night and would squeeze them tightly before screaming in their ears, leaving a ringing noise but never harming them. The feature was roughly 7 foot tall, wearing dark clothing and a wide-brimmed hat. Black Shuck. Black Shuck is the name given to a ghostly black dog that would roam the coastline and countryside of East Angela. It's recorded as an omen of death, but also sometimes as companionable. The name Shuck comes from the English word sucka, devil or fiend, or also perhaps from the root ska, to terrify. The first mention of the Shuck is from an 1850 journal from Reverend E.S. Taylor, where he describes seeing the black shaggy dog with fiery eyes as immense size and who would visit the churchyards at midnight. Gloomy Sunday. Gloomy Sunday, also called the Hungarian Gay Men's Song, is a popular song composed by a Hungarian artist and composer, Riszó Szeres. I'm very sorry I butchered that name. The original lyrics were about despair caused by war, which ended in a quiet prayer about people's sins. The urban legend around the song mostly involved it being connected with various gay men's and radio networks reacting by banning the song. But most of the claims were unsubstantiated, as the legend rose as embellishment of the high number of Hungarian people that ended up taking their own lives in the decade that the song was composed due to other factors like famine or poverty, and no studies have actually shown a link between the song and, killing praying mantises is illegal. This is a myth that originated in the 50s, saying that it was illegal to kill praying mantises, but it isn't true and it never has been. Don't lick envelopes. There is a legend circulating stating that if you lick an envelope, you could lick roach eggs that get stuck to the glue, and licking them could allow them to get stuck in any cuts or anything on your tongue, and then they would hatch inside of your mouth. But obviously this is false. Cockroaches don't lay tiny eggs, and you won't find an individual cockroach egg, because baby cockroaches develop inside a sealed egg that holds about a dozen embryos. The egg case is about the size of a pea, so it'd be very difficult not to see one on an envelope flap. Area 51. Area 51 is a highly classified Air Force facility in Nevada. Most of the legends surrounding it involve aliens or other crazy weapons or government control. The Tails doll. Tails doll was a version of Tails created by Dr. Robotnik, but it also had a creepypasta under the same name that involved Tails being a homicidal maniac that seeked to kill anybody who performed the Tails doll curse. Atlantis. Atlantis was an ancient civilization talked about by Greek philosopher Plato. Civilization was thought to have been extremely beautiful, like a utopia of sorts, with lush islands containing gold, silver, and other precious metals, as well as an abundance of exotic wildlife. But most scientists and ocean explorers believe that this is false, and it's just a story made by Plato that showed his ideal world. Herobrine, the notorious urban legend in Minecraft, of an evil version of Steve that would infiltrate your world and be focused on following your player and bothering them. He would do that by destroying blocks, building odd structures, or just kind of fucking with you. His skin was just the default Steve skin, but with white eyes instead of the normal ones. The Mandela Effect. The Mandela Effect is a phenomenon of people having vivid memories of things that didn't exist, or slight altercations to things that do exist. The name Mandela Effect was created after a paranormal researcher named Fiona Broom had vivid and detailed memories of news coverage of Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s, even though that never happened. The Momo Challenge. The Momo Challenge was a hoax/internet legend surrounding a scary image that would make you play a game very similar to the Blue Whale Challenge that involved very dangerous acts that would start with self-harm and eventual game ends. Webdriver Torso. Webdriver Torso was a YouTube automated performance test that had gained popularity after people speculated that it was potentially contact from extraterrestrial life forms, or even as a Cicada 3301 recruitment program. I want to say sorry, I guess once again, for the gap in videos. It's probably been another month since I've uploaded last, I know. I was hoping to upload more recently, but I want to work on some other projects as well. I was hoping to maybe make like one of those more serious documentary type of videos eventually. So that's kind of what I've been slightly putting research into. As well as I recently made a narration video for a YouTuber, or I guess I was in a narration segment for a YouTuber. So actually, if any of you people have come from that video, maybe you've seen mine now, welcome. Hope you enjoyed this video. Sorry if I seem a little rushed or out of breath. I'm like, some reason having a little bit of shortness of breath whenever I try to make these type of videos. I don't know, just whatever. But yeah, love you all. Thank you for your support as always, and I'll try to see you sooner in the next video. Adios. Wait, I guess just goodbye.